This is Oscar with PS Arts. Thank you for joining me in my studio and thank you for welcoming me into yours. Today's project is inspired by a book called Magritte's Marvelous Hat, written by D.B. Johnson. If you've never read the book before, we have a read-along available on our YouTube page. So you can click a link in the description for this video. We'll have it there so you can read along with one of our artists and then create a project inspired by the book. The book is inspired by an artist named René Magritte, who was a surrealist artist. So we're going to be creating a surrealist work of art today. René Magritte was most famous for his surrealist paintings. He was primarily a painter. And when you look at his paintings and also the work of other surrealists like Salvador Dali, you might look at their work and say, hey, this isn't real. And that the images that surrealists were creating weren't images of things or situations that happen in everyday life. And you'd be correct. To surrealists, their images were more than real. The prefix sur in the word surreal actually means above, beyond, or in addition to. So really, their work was above reality. Surrealists would oftentimes try to paint their own dreams. And in the case of Magritte, they would often put things that don't usually go together in one picture. In art, we call that juxtaposition. Today we'll be working from his image, The Return, where he juxtaposes daytime and nighttime. So for today's project, you're going to be using a few different materials. We're going to be using some oil pastels, some watercolor, as well as some scissors and some glue to cut and paste some things together. You're going to need some paper. I'm using mixed media paper since I'm using watercolors. I want my paper to be able to handle water and not sort of tear down like regular paper does. And you're going to need another sheet of paper for a printout. This is the bird that I'm going to be using for my image. We see its beak here, 2 wings, and its tail. We have some of these templates up on our to-go website, so if you don't want to draw your own, which you're more than welcome to, you can draw your own animal. You can use our templates from our website, print those out, and then just work from that if you would like to. So for the first step, what you want to do is you want to decide whether your scene is going to be a daytime scene or a nighttime scene. This is going to influence how you're going to paint your animal. So if you choose a daytime scene, the inside of your animal is going to be painted as a nighttime scene. They're going to be opposites. So if you choose a nighttime scene for this is going to be a daytime scene. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to choose a daytime scene for mine. So I'm going to be working with an oil pastel to create some clouds in the sky. Then I'm going to go over with a nice bright blue to give sort of a daytime sky. But I'm also going to imagine the habitat for my animal. I'm going to imagine where this bird lives. So if you think to the title of Magritte's painting, his painting is actually called The Return. So to me, that gives me an idea of migration. So this animal is returning to its habitat. And so you see a kind of nest in Magritte's painting. I'm going to be doing the same. My bird is going to be returning to its nest to check on its eggs, To start off, I'm just going to use a white oil pastel to create my clouds on top. I'm going to leave some space here at the bottom so that I can draw some of its habitat. I want to draw maybe some grass, and like a little nest off to the side. So the top is mostly just going to be clouds. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to, and make sure you press, you can press pretty hard with your oil pastel, you know, depending on, mine's pretty thick, it doesn't break easily. If you have thinner oil pastels, you know, you don't want to break them, but you do want to make sure that you get enough oil pastel on here, so don't be afraid of going over it a few times. Now, you are using white on white, but chances are that your white oil pastel is not the exact same color as your white sheet of paper. Your oil pastel might actually be a bit darker than your white sheet of paper. So you'll still be able, it'll be difficult to see where you're making your marks, but if you sort of angle yourself and you move around your paper, and you move your paper around whatever light you're using, you're going to be able to see some of the marks that you're making so that you know where you need to fill in, or where you've already laid out some clouds. So I'm going to put some more down here. Now I'm spacing them out. I'm not putting them like right next to each other. I'm giving them enough space to breathe around the paper. You can kind of see on camera where I put some. See, I have one right here, I have another one off to the side right here, and some above. So I'm just getting some clouds here. Now remember, you are going to be gluing your animal on top of here. So, around the middle area, if you're gluing your animal in the middle area, that stuff's going to get covered up. So don't worry too much. Chances are this cloud that I drew here, part of it is going to be covered up. So I'm going to draw some more here off to the side, just so I make sure that I have a good amount of clouds that are not covered up. And they don't all, some of them can be kind of cut off to the paper, so you can draw half of a cloud right on the edge of the paper, and that gives your painting a sense of movement. It's like the clouds are sort of moving. Some of them are completely in your image, some of them are sort of cutting off because they've already moved past the surface of your paper. Alright, so I've got my clouds here. I'm just going to go over them just a little bit more, just to make sure that I have enough oil pass there to resist the watercolor that I'm going to be putting on top of it later. So I just went over them one more time. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create sort of my grassy area down here. I'm going to use a dark oil pastel, a dark green, kind of like this one here. And just laying down some marks. To give the impression of some grass, right? Just to give the idea that this is some grass here. So I've laid out the darker color. Now I am going to leave this chunk here for my nest. I want it to sort of interrupt the grass, so I'm going to take this dark brown here that I have, and to make my nest I'm just going to create sort of some circles here. Let me show you what I mean by that. So these are some of the shapes that I've created. This is sort of the surrounding area of the nest, and I'm going to create some eggs here in the middle. So these are going to be the eggs that are waiting for the return of the bird that's flying in my scene. You see, I'm very loose. I'm not really focused on making a realistic sort of drawing. So I've got kind of my nest there, and it's just, when you look at a nest, it's just a bunch of twigs and branches sort of just thrown together. So you want to keep some of that texture, some of that random, spontaneous. You can do that using sort of random, spontaneous marks, very expressive marks. Now I'm going to create some eggs on top of. I'm using this sort of pinkish, kind of peachish color. It's kind of sort of like a light skin tone. And I'm just creating some ovals that look kind of like eggs. So there you go. See, I've got some grass, and I've got my kind of nest here with some egg shaped, with some eggs there. And now I'm ready to paint my sky. Now, if you didn't choose a bird, maybe you chose a different animal. Think about where, you can go on the internet and search for the habitat of that animal, and try to recreate images that sort of give you the idea of that habitat. Just make sure to leave enough space for a sky on top of that. So I'm ready now for my sky. So I'm just taking a blue here, a nice bright sky blue. I'm just gonna paint over my cloud. Because your watercolor is activated by water, and because your oil pastels are made from oil, are made using oil, they're going to resist each other because water and oil don't mix. So there will be areas of your cloud that aren't completely covered by oil pastels, and so your watercolor will go through that, but that's okay. Don't worry too much about that. It'll give you sort of an interesting look. So you can see here I'm just going over with paint. I'm using a nice broad brush to cover up a lot of area because I'm not really being detailed right now. I'm just painting, just covering, just coloring. So again, think about the habitat where your animal lives. Think about what your animal is returning to. My animal, my bird, is returning to its family here. It's to check up on its family, check up on its eggs that it laid out in its beautiful nest. See how they're doing. So once you're done, you're gonna have something like what I created here. You see my clouds there made with oil pastels. See my grass and some eggs down there. You're gonna set this off to the side so that it can dry for a little while. And now you're going to focus on your animal. So again, surrealism works with opposites, right? So the opposite in this case is going to be daytime and nighttime. That's what we're gonna juxtapose. I've created a daytime sky here. Now I'm going to create a nighttime sky here. If you did the opposite, just do the opposite. So if you created a nighttime sky here, your animal is going to be a daytime sky. And the way I like to create nighttime skies is I like to use a yellow oil pastel. And this is going to be my stars. So I like to just make little dots all over my animal like this, sort of spaced out, some bigger than others, some a little smaller. You can use different colors if you want. You can sort of make them shine a little bit using some different lines around it. So let me show you what I mean by that. So you can use little lines there to make them shine a little bit, or you can just draw little dots like I've done here. I'm only going to be using yellow for mine. I just like the way that it looks. Again, just spacing them out. I don't want them too cluttered. I don't want them too close to each other. All right. So I've covered my animal entirely with different stars. And now what I want to do is I want to do the same thing that we did with the sky, with my sky earlier where I used blue. Now I'm going to use black. I'm going to cover my animal with black. So you want to wipe your brush off, make sure that you don't have any of that blue lingering in there. You just want to wash it off. You want to wash it and you want to wipe it. Maybe you have a cloth or some kind of paper. Now here you don't have to worry about staying within the lines when you're painting, because we're going to be cutting this out anyway. So don't be afraid to just go right over. See that? I'm not staying in the lines at all. I'm just painting without fear. You just want to cover this whole thing. Look how cool that looks. And again, it's going to resist, the oil pastel is going to resist your watercolor. So you can just paint right on over. If you want it to be sort of darker, just wait for it to dry a little bit and then just add a little more. But just be careful. You don't want to wet your paper too much that it starts to rip. But in the beginning, when you're putting down sort of your first layer of paint, it's going to look a little grayish because mixed in with the water, it sort of makes it a little lighter. But you can just wait for it to dry and just add another layer. I'm happy with the way that it is now. I'm going to show you. Have sort of my nighttime. So now I'm going to cut it out and I'm going to glue it on top here. So I'm just going to cut this out. Alright, so I cut out my bird here, And I chose not to keep the thick black lines that I had on the paper. If you want to keep those, then go ahead and keep them. But I felt like, if I cut those black lines off, when I glued it on top, it would feel like the nighttime sky and the daytime sky were a little closer together. They wouldn't have that black line sort of separating them. But it's up to you. It's your painting. It's your style. So go ahead and do whatever you would like to. But for our final step, what you're going to do is you're going to put some glue on your image. So for a final step, you're going to get a glue stick. You're going to get your image. So make sure this is dry. Give it enough time to dry. You don't want to glue it down while it's still wet. And then you're gonna have your very own surrealist painting. So check out how we've sort of juxtaposed the daytime sky with the nighttime sky there. Pretty cool. You can choose to place your animal anywhere that you want. You can place it, to the left side, or to the right side. It could be sticking out of your paper. It's completely up to you. The surrealists use their imagination to its maximum. So you can do the same. So this was our project for today. I really hope you had fun. Really hope you enjoyed it. I really want to thank you for joining me in my studio again. And we want to see your work, so go ahead, post on your social media, ask your parents for permission, ask an adult for permission, to see if you can post on social media and use the hashtag psartstogo. There'll be some more information about that at the end of the video, but just always remember, as a PS artist, you have the freedom to imagine and the power to create. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.